Welcome to another episode of the Hack My Age podcast. We are post summer. Can you believe it? This is September already. September is a very interesting month in the Biohacking Menopause membership group because we're having an awesome giveaway by Nebu Naturals. This is makeupless makeup. This is astaxanthin infused oils, which I absolutely love. You know, I've spoken about this before. So go to the Biohacking Menopause membership group. I'll have a link to that in the show notes because this is Nikki Burns is the one who created Nebu. She is giving a huge basket of all of her products away. So you have got to sign up before October 1st to have a chance to win the giveaway. So if you're wondering, what is this Biohacking Menopause group? This is a private women's only membership group. So you have a chance to win the great products. You have live Q&As with me and all the guest experts that are experts in menopause, biohacking, hormones. It's fantastic. And we have breathwork classes. You get so much. And of course, community. So go and check it out. I'll have the link in the show notes. A reminder, subscribe to the podcast, write a review. It's so simple. It's something that takes just a few moments. It's free and makes a huge impact for the podcast. It helps us grow bigger. So if you want to have more guests and you want to have this show going on and on and on, please go and write a review. Thank you for you who know who you are, who've already written the review. And go and share the podcast with a friend if you think she'll benefit from this, or he as well. I do have men listeners. So today's episode, we meet Maria Claps and Kristen Johnson. These ladies are amazing. They wrote this book called The Menopause Myth, which we're going to talk about in the episode, but it's not like one big book promotion. We talk a lot about other things, but some of those things you'll find in the book. We talk about the myths, of course, and truths of menopause. We talk about the menopause experiences and hormone therapy use across the globe. We talked about how aging and menopause are intertwined, the different voices of menopause, what's the best way to approach it. Is hormone deficiency a thing, and is it good or bad? Why menopause is such a mystery to so many women and what to do about it. And the truth, at least their truth, about Bi-Est as a hormone treatment. Really interesting take on that. And then, of course, what you're going to learn is how to empower yourself through this whole journey. Now, who are Maria and Kristen? Well, Maria Claps is an FDN practitioner. That means functional diagnostic nutrition. And Kristen Johnson is an NTP. That means nutritional therapy practitioners training, and she's board certified in holistic nutrition. So these ladies, they go deep in the book about food and nutrition and how that plays a role in your menopause journey. And they're both friends and practitioners who are really passionate about women's health, especially women's health at midlife. And you want to know why? Well, I'm going to guess because they're both menopausal themselves. And over the years, they've refined the art and science of thriving as a midlife woman based on their clinical and their personal experience. And so what they discovered is that when they combine both individualized nutrition and lifestyle changes that are tailored to a midlife woman's needs, that includes mindset coaching, lab testing, hormone replacement therapy education, and they find out that it's a magic recipe that helps women thrive so they can stop, reverse, or prevent their health from spinning out of control. And together they wrote their first baby book, The Great Menopause Myth, which I was lucky enough to get an advance copy before this interview. And it's great. It's really, really good. And it will be one of my Bibles to refer to over and over again. And they really covered a lot in this book. And we hardly scratched the surface about it in the interviews. So you're going to just have to get it yourself. And before we dive into the podcast, we have to read the fancy disclaimer that this podcast episode contains Maria and Kristen's personal experiences, ideas, and opinions, which they have formed as postmenopausal women working with helping other women in this transition. And their intent is to provide helpful general information on the topics contained herein and is in no way a substitute for the advice of your own medical professionals. Individual help for any personal symptoms, conditions, or other concerns should be sought by consulting with a skilled and competent physician and or other qualified health professional. Many of the recommendations and analyses discussed are supported by scientific studies and clinical work. All right, so let's get started. What a pleasure it is to have Kristen and Maria today. Welcome.
Thank you for
Thank
having us.
you.
This would be fun, like the three-way. I will have to you guys just interrupt whenever you want. Honestly, it's you guys are obviously on the same team. It's going to be really cool. I'll see if I can sometimes pull you out one at a time. But honestly, I read your book, The Great Menopause Myth. I was lucky to get an advanced copy, and I'm so proud of you. It's amazing. Amazing.
Thank you.
You did a great job. You got great. You guys went really detailed. It wasn't all this scientific jargon, so people get lost, but it was all science and fact-based, which was great because you had amazing, like the citations at the end were just, yeah, huge. And you got great graphics and you had images and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm keeping it as my little menopause Bible to go back to when I have questions or doubts. And I'm just really proud of you. So I want to ask you girls, why and how did you choose this title, The Great Menopause Myth?
Well, if we're totally honest, it was actually chosen for us, but I think it was chosen based on a book proposal. We had been approached to write the book. And then ironically, we're told in order for us to write the book, we had to give them a proposal sort of thing. So it wasn't our idea to start. And then we gave the proposal. And in that, we did kind of provide an introduction, sort of a, why is this book needed? Why is this topic certainly being talked a lot about, but not really covering all the bases and definitely not getting the nuance? And when we sort of made our pitch, then it was brought back to us. So what you're saying is there's sort of these myths around menopause that need to be dispelled. And so it kind of became the Great Menopause Myth. And it threw me and Maria for a loop in the beginning, but then we've really come to kind of enjoy being able to sort of poke holes in certain concepts being discussed within the social and, web spheres and say, but that's actually a myth in how you're being presented that topic. And so it just sort of took on a life of its own, but it was definitely chosen for us.
It was great. It's a great title. And I think, do you want to mention just maybe one or two of the myths that you debunk in the book?
Sure. One of them is that just because someone is licensed to prescribe HRT does not mean that they know how, they have your best interests at heart. So that's one of them.
Good one. Yes. And you did.
That is a good one.
It's one that's very poignant and needs to be understood by women right now. So
it's so true because you do see a lot of women starting and then they just give up or fail or they're not getting the right information. They're still scared. Their doctors are not really sure. So I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of health practitioners need to be reading this book too, to really get things kind of straight. So, all right, let's talk about some of the stats. I thought you had so many great stats and you pulled out great studies. And one of them you said was by 2030, 14% of the world population, which is about a third of all the women in the world at this time will be postmenopausal. Postmenopausal, meaning that they don't have their periods anymore and they're technically in this menopause, right? So I'm just trying to think, imagine how many more are actually in that perimenopause transition. Yep. Like you didn't even count those people. And so that's going to be a huge, maybe half of all women will be either in peri or postmenopause by then. And that's a big number. Yeah. I'm wondering if you had any stats, and I couldn't remember if you did or not, if on women who are actually taking hormone therapy worldwide.
Yeah, so the global numbers are hard to pin down, but by country and continent, there are a little bit more information on that. So a lot of times you hear people saying in the US, it's about 6% of women are taking HRT. Now, that would probably be accurate if it was 6% of menopausal women. If you just looked at women, which would capture those perimenopausal women as well as others, it's really about 3.5%. So it's 6 million women in terms of hard numbers, not percentage, in the US are on it. Now, if you look at Asia, it's about 19%, which is interesting.
And
Yep.
so how
And
did you that one? Because I've been trying to get these numbers too, and it's really,
yeah,
really hard. So when I'm doing some of these reels in Thailand or Vietnam, and it's like it's really hard to pull out. And then Asia, and we have some stats on China, which are
right.
pretty low. But
Yeah.
and actually that's quite a when you found out this one from Asia, it's do you have an idea? Where did you find this? Just out of
There was
curiosity.
that great survey that was just done. It was I think the article was published in 2024, and it was a great survey sort of looking at menopause in the West and comparing it to other countries.
Uh-huh.
And for like Poland, for example, there's a study just, I think it was 2022, saying what's the prevalence of menopausal hormone therapy in Poland? And it was 45%. So yes, no,
I'm
of
here
course,
right now and I'm going to have to find out because that's amazing. I wouldn't even get women to talk to me. It was really hard last time I wasn't here in Poland because I'm here now to even talk to me about men. I think this was the hardest country other than Latvia to find a woman who will be open and talking to me about it. It seemed to me so hush hush. And
yeah.
they're very like, when I did find some women, it's a really badge of honor that I did it naturally without any hormones. And so that number is really surprising to me.
It
Um,
is. But I think we do
oh,
have to look at, are these numbers looking at all women or are they looking at just menopausal women, right? Because that's going to change the percentage quite a bit. But even so, 45% of even all postmenopausal women, that's a big number. And I do have to wonder from a cynical lens, I apologize, that is this partly because in the US we have so much big pharma capture that we give women other drugs, other pharmaceuticals, rather than treating the actual root issue, which is the insufficiency of their sex hormones. And I just have to wonder, you just look at in the US, you can't watch a television show without getting bombarded by pharmaceutical commercials. Those are illegal everywhere else in the world, right? And so it does beg the question, is the low number in the US an outcropping of sort of this pharmaceutical capture and therefore bigger numbers in the other countries?
super interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
I really would love to see this paper. I mean, if send it to me later. I want to
Okay,
see
I
some of these,
will.
the Asia one and the Poland one because it's you're good at digging it out. I want to talk when I first started the book, it was interesting. You had two different voices of menopause, which I think we should bring out. You had this sort of empowerment, menopause is a disease, and then the other side, embrace aging naturally. So tell us a little bit more about these two voices and why you wanted to talk about them.
Well, there for the longest time, gosh, I remember reading a book probably about 10 years ago. It was by a woman who clearly labeled herself a feminist, and her first name was Barbara. I cannot remember her last name, but it was about embracing menopause naturally and not needing HRT. And so that's been a bit of sort of like a feminist hallmark thing for a while. And it's because when confronted with the reality, which is hormone deficiency, they don't like the way that sounds. They don't want to be told that, that anything about them is deficient. And, then there's this tie into, unfortunately, there was somewhat the unfortunate influence of Dr. Wilson, who wrote Feminine Forever, which I would say, Kristen, we don't 100% disagree with him.
We don't, no.
Don't send us nasty emails later. Um, but there were some unfortunate things, like he was in the clutches of I believe it was Pfizer,
Yeah.
and so but not everything he said was wrong. But some of the things he said certainly could kind of get the ire of people who identify as strong feminists. And please nobody email me about that either as well. But it's just, no, I'm fine. I don't need to perpetuate youthfulness and a youthful look to capture the male gaze. And we posit that it's just so it's not that. It's just so many other things besides that. And unfortunately, I think that's where that camp, I'm not hormone deficient, is about. I want to age naturally, whatever that means to them. And, I don't want to keep myself youthful looking or youthful seeming for someone else. And it just goes beyond that. And then the other camp, which is, us, which is, you are hormone deficient. I mean, we will, kind of we'll stand on that hill for sure. It is absolutely a hormone deficiency. And it's not about your looks. Yeah, your looks are affected, and some women like that. I mean, I quite frankly, I like the fact that estradiol is reduced skin aging, right? But it's so much deeper than skin deep, right? So that's, we're saying you don't even really have to choose between those.
No. And that's the thing is there's some unattractive features of both position. And I would say even the ones that talk about empowerment, a lot of times they talk about it in this sort of, excuse my French, F the patriarchy sort of attitude that, this is my time. And it's kind of almost this militant, angry sort of approach to being a woman in middle age. And Maria and I are like, it doesn't have to be either one. I mean, we've got 7 sons between us, married to 2 men. We love men. We do not blame them for our menopause, and we're not going to mobilize our menopause as sort of an opportunity to kind of overcome men either. So we don't love either camp. And I think what's frustrating is that there's so much discussion that's tainted by this sort of mentality. And I think one thing is the women who want to age naturally, they also kind of have this attitude of, if you're telling me that my hormones are necessary for me to age, you're telling me that I have no value in society. And Maria and I are like, wait a minute, what about the lady in the tent? Like, we're the wise one that everyone's going to come to, sort of thing. There's a reason why grandma is the one in the kitchen at the holidays teaching and whatever. So we just get frustrated because I think a lot of women never even contemplate that they have to choose a side. And then they enter menopause and hear this messaging and think, oh, I guess I'm supposed to be mad at men, or I guess I'm supposed to eschew anything that might make me feel better. Now I don't know what to do. And it's just so incredibly unhelpful. So we reject both of them, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, and also you don't have to choose. And it all depends on how you interpret this. Honestly,
Exactly.
what is the perspective and where are you coming from? Because it's can be skewed so one way or the other, and into one extreme and the other extreme. And this whole, like, quote unquote natural way of doing things is supposed to be the best, or the highest order, and people anything less. But you could call hormones, bioidentical hormones, your own natural hormones. There's nothing more natural than your own hormones. I mean, again, do you want to skew it that way, or do you want to skew being natural and just white knuckle your way through this? And honestly, I think it's just such a personal choice when women decide to take hormones or not to take hormones. It's their jam. But I think what we are trying to do and what I'm trying to do is just educate women or at least try to push them in the right direction so that they do educate themselves with some information rather than go on what they heard of or their beliefs or whatever. So I think it's usually had a good point. Exactly. And it doesn't have to be one way or the other, but it seems like people just want to drive their stick in the sand and without really looking at the whole picture. And
Yeah.
and then sort of propose to the rest of the world or their friends or the other women around them what the best way is, because their way, what works for them, is the best. And
Yeah.
as we know, all women have different experiences of menopause. And
Yeah.
honestly, I think it's every woman's right to choose how she wants to do it. But that shared informed decision making with your doctor, I think, is what seems to be lacking, and at least what I'm
Well,
saying.
and we want to tell women, like, those who want to age naturally, can we look at the stats on that? Can we look at what that means? Because that means also you're not going to take statins for your ever increasing lipid profile. You're not going to take bisphosphonates for your ever porous bones. You're not going to do anything for your cognition. You're not going to lube your vagina because it's dry. Like, that's natural, right? And that's such complete bunk, because women are reaching for these other crutches with zero contemplation of whether or not it's natural. But God forbid you talk about hormones with them. And all of a sudden they're like, well, no, that's not natural. And I'm like, last I checked, I don't think being 70 and on 12 pharmaceuticals is natural either. But, you know, choose your poison. So.
Great point. You have a great, I always remember this article that you wrote. I don't know if you wrote it together or not, but you posted it in your group, in your circle group, the Midlife Mastery group, which
Yeah.
everybody can join for free. It's really, I'll have that in the show notes. But you wrote this article about, yeah, that argument, is it natural or not natural? And it was brilliant. Actually, I'll put a link to that article too, if I can, if you have that in as a blog.
Yeah, we can give it to you. Yep.
Cool. Good read. Good. Yeah, great argument. Let's move on. The in your book as well, at the beginning, you also did like you just mentioned now this hormone deficiency word. But I'm a little bit confused because when I started to read, you said, okay, this is a problem. And then I was like, well, why is it a problem? Because in the end, this is what we're talking about. And I hear you on social media and we're all talking about a hormone deficiency. So hormone deficiency, it sounded like it was a problem for you to say that, or what did you mean by that?
I think it's perceived by others as a problem. I mean, we actually do believe that we are becoming hormone deficient, and people push back because they say something like, well, that's supposed to happen. You're supposed to lose your hormones in, in the postmenopause phase of life, which is absolutely true. It is what happens, but it still means you're deficient in those hormones. And they are still very necessary for many bodily functions, not just suppression of symptoms. So Kristen and I do not have an issue with kind of speaking about, the postmenopause phase as hormone deficiency. I think a lot of other people do, though, unfortunately. And I think a lot of, some of it ties back to, I would say a lot of it ties back to that whole camps thing that we just
Yeah. I think too, though, that where women, they miss the nuance. And this is one of the things, like Maria and I will die on the hill of nuance. If it kills us, we're going to keep bringing it up. What we are supposed to lose as we age is our fertility, right? There are a lot of societal arguments for, why would a 65-year-old want to have a baby? Because society would likely be left raising that child in her absence when she eventually passes. And if women were to all be still getting pregnant, and this is not offense to anyone who's chosen to, pursue fertility in their 40s and 50s, that's perfectly fine. But if we as a society were all able to have babies straight through to our 50s and 60s, we have to look at what would the health of those fetuses be, because we do know that as eggs and sperm age, the vitality of the infant can be changed. We do know the epigenetic expression is going to be much deeper and broader because we've just lived more years of life. And so that's going to be passed on. And we also know that we need to be vital humans to raise these kids, and to see, child of, let's say, a 78-year-old man, they're not exactly out there with coaching the T-ball team, right? So there are reasons why we should and do lose our fertility. But unfortunately, we've tied sex hormones to fertility so tightly that we miss the point that sex hormones are doing all these other things that Maria just hinted at. And so should we be losing those? No, but we have antibiotics and shelter and weapons that have allowed us to live now past the age of menopause that we didn't have many years ago. It's only been about 100 years that we've seen this lifespan change from 40s to 80s, right? So we've doubled our lifespan. We have not doubled our health span. And that's the part of the evolutionary piece that people are starting to miss, is we just haven't been here long enough for the body to figure out how to retain vitality as we age. But losing fertility, that's a given, and that should happen. But people are kind of missing that piece of, like, sex hormones are only for fertility versus sex hormones are for vitality.
I like that. Sex hormones are for vitality too. I have to remember that one.
Yeah.
As I travel around the world finding women to talk to me about menopause, there's still a lot of mystery there, and of course taboo, and I don't think people see all the rejection I get because I don't post that when they say no, I will not talk to you about menopause. Why do you think that there's so much mystery around menopause?
I think it's tied into the ability to be fertile and to be, and so there's that one thing. And then I also think I know you encounter this worldwide, but I don't know that the West, and for that matter, the East, is that much different than the US when we consider that, a woman who looks and appears young and appears to be holding on to, her youthfulness is to be prized. And so therefore, a menopausal woman who is clearly, she's aging, she's not 30 anymore, is just not valued as much. So
Yeah.
that's just,
Yeah, I think it definitely goes to that. 100%. I think it's the whole, do we have anything to offer society, and is there value in us? And sadly, women, it's menopause is a time of isolation, and we kind of turn inward, and no one's going to be, first of all, we're not standing out at bus stops talking to our neighbors and our girlfriends any longer, right? The kids have left, or if we didn't have any, whatever, now we're not talking about those things around the water cooler. So we don't have this sort of community around us that's the same that we had when we were younger. And let's be honest, some of the things that occur in menopause are a little uncomfortable to talk about. No one wants to talk about their waning libido, because does that mean that my marriage is on the rocks? Oh my gosh, is someone going to talk about me and my husband if they find out that we're not having sex, and maybe I don't like it because it's uncomfortable, but I don't want to say that because who has uncomfortable sex? And you can kind of see this unraveling of what menopause is doing to a woman's body and mind. Sometimes we don't feel like ourselves, right? We might have more anxiety. We might not be as high performing as we used to. Our ability to multitask starts to kind of wane. I used to joke in my 40s, I needed a list to tell me where my lists were in order to make my life happen. That's all very kind of unsettling for a woman heading into her 50s to admit that the world kind of feels a little unstable and rocky beneath her feet. So we don't talk about it, right? And so therefore, if it's all tied into menopause, we're not going to talk about menopause, period. And that, I think, is where a lot of this comes from. It's like, it is that value element, but it's also, who wants to admit in their 50s that they don't have it all together?
You're right. And I think that goes cross-culturally. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if and I haven't done the research, but when I did my master's in gerontology, we talked a lot about this theory called AIR, acquisition, internalization, and reinforcement of aging, right? We found out that, well, at least through the research that's been done, that there are people who go as we age, or at least actually when we're young as age 6, we can observe how our parents are treating older adults. We may watch cartoons and we may see what an older person, stereotypical older person, and we observe how what's happening around us. So when we may have this internalization of being tired, shuffle walking, the gray hair, or whatever, when this starts to happen, the fatigue comes in, for example, we go, oh, this is what aging must be like. I'm going to start embracing this. Okay. And you internalize this. And this is really dangerous because it's like self-perpetuated ageism to
Yeah.
yourself. And unnecessarily, honestly. And so then once we accept this and we go, you know what, I'm tired, this is aging, whatever, I'm going to slow down. And again, anyone can age the way they want to. There's a whole menu of choice, but there's a lot of unnecessary aging, I guess, in the sense that you don't have to be tired. You don't have to be shuffle walking. You can actually say, well, that's not actually aging. Maybe you're sick. Maybe there's something else that's going on that you can correct. And then once you accept this and embrace it, you reinforce it into society that older adults should be like this. Now,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could say the same thing about menopause. Oh, here comes the hot flashes, here comes the night sweats and the anxiety and the stress, and you just embrace it and go, you know what, that's and again, can be anyone's choice, but I'm wondering how much does this affect a woman in the sense the same way it would in terms of ageism. And again, this is this is very dangerous when it comes to your self perpetuating ageist stereotypes.
Yeah. I mean, I think Maria and I see women trying to outrun menopause, and that's not helpful either. And again, it goes, kind of like, let's find Goldilocks and find our position here, right? We are not 30-year-olds any longer. My body does not look 30. It does not act 30. My hair and skin are not 30, etc. That doesn't mean then that I'm it's 70 and I should just let all my grays come out if that's what, I think that I should do because of society or whatever. But at the same time, I'm not of no value. I'm not someone who can't go to Norway and hike a 19,000-foot peak with my husband and camp overnight. Like, you know what I mean? And we see these women who they're doing the CrossFit 5 days a week and they're, getting the breast implants in their 50s and they're shooting Botox and filler and all these things. And they're, desperately clinging onto their 30-year-old version of themselves. And then we see the others who are kind of just letting it all hang out. It doesn't have to be either one, right? I mean, I look at my belly and it's like not the flat belly that I used to have, but God bless, I have a husband who comes and hugs me from behind and he grabs my little, I call it my lunch plate around my belly button. And he said, this is here because you brought 3 humans into this world. Love it. Love it. Don't hide it. Don't be ashamed of it, whatever. Every time Maria and I are on a podcast and I look back and I'm like, oh my God, the crow's feet. And then I'll say something and my husband will say, it's because you smile so damn much, And so to us, it's like, let's just reframe things, ladies. 50 is freaking awesome. 60 should be awesome. We have so much life. We do not need to make excuses or apologies to anyone any longer. We've, done wonderful things in our lives. We have wisdom to impart. We still have vitality to explore. It doesn't have to be either or. We don't have to chase it and be so afraid of aging. And we think, Maria and I like to say, these people are so afraid of dying. And we don't have to also just lean in and suddenly let all the pieces come undone simply because we hit menopause. So again, it's sort of like reframe, look at the priorities, look at the blessing. It's a blessing to age, right? It's a privilege to age. Embrace it. I have 0 explanations that I need to give to anyone in my life any longer. And that's a pretty fun place to be. I mean,
That's it. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's hard for a woman in her 50s, though, this midlife transition. So just because and I understand why embrace your youth. I'm vain. I'm sorry. I'm like to, look my best and
we color our hair, we do things.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I think everybody got to find their own way. But I think it's particularly hard for those women because you recognize, okay, you're not young anymore. Okay. You're not the same. You see that. That's why you try to change things, but you're not old either. And you're not that old as old. So you're in this transition. And that's why I think you just kind of hang on because you haven't yet accepted it yet. Sometimes I wish I could just fast forward into my 60s and go, I don't care anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a really good point. And I hear what Kristen is saying, and I agree with it. And that is that, we have internalized some ideas of aging, right? Like I will speak to my mom is 76 and I try to get her to think, she's unfortunately the 70 somethings, they're the ones that missed out on the HRT, right?
Yeah.
Because of the WHI. And it's a heartbreak when I see the 70 somethings like my mom and, mom, you're really tired and let's think of what we can do about this. Can we change what you're eating? How can we get you better sleep and things like that? And she has 100% bought into, Maria, I'm 76. Maria, I'm 76. So, but on the other hand, Zora, like Kristen and I believe, regardless of every effort from HRT to plastic surgery, the body changes with age. So I think that we do have to accept a certain amount of change. And it might mean something like this. I'll use an extreme example. We're not running a marathon anymore, but we are participating a half marathon, 12 miles or so, and we're walking. And we're doing that at 65, 70, 75, 80. And, that's pretty amazing, right? But we're not like sitting on our rocker all day. We're actually out there participating in life. So yes, I think it's a very interesting time. We do have to kind of realize that we will change regardless of everything. But yet we're not doing great collectively as a society when we look at the women who are in their say mids, when they hit about 63 or so, that's when we seem to see like the bottom falls out. So that
I feel like there's one message Maria and I kind of want to give, and I don't mean to sound harsh, but we're kind of we've been in this space a lot longer than a lot of these influencers have been. So we've been watching this and neck deep with other ladies for years and years and years. But the late 40-year-olds, early 50-year-olds who are like lamenting what is happening to them, I would say, get rid of your victim mentality. You're not special. Every freaking woman is going to go through this or has gone through it.
You're
There's
lucky.
nothing unique about what you're experiencing. Nothing. And if you just sort of accepted what this is, just this physical aging that's happening, and look at your resources. What can you do to address the things that are most important to you? For some women, we will have women come to us that say, I just want to get my skin looking prettier. Others are petrified of heart disease. There's nothing wrong with those two approaches, but the solution that each one needs is very different, right? And so that's our point to women, is like, stop the pity party. It's not that bad. You have lots of choices. Identify your goals and move the hell on, because guess what? We got all these women behind us who are about to go through it. And you got all these women in front of you who are about to go through it. I kind of liken it to whenever you've had like your first baby and you look around to your friends who might have had babies before you, and you kind of feel like an idiot because you didn't realize that you didn't know what you didn't know. And now that you're, gone through it, you're like, oh, okay. And then you look at the ones who are pregnant and have all these nice ideas about how it's going to be, and you go, yeah, just wait.
Well,
So I kind of see that as we're just in that stage of a different part of our lives.
yeah, I think the most important thing to know is that we have choices now.
Yeah.
Whereas, and I understand the fear of the women are in the younger women when they see these social media jokes and funny videos and
Yeah.
on all the horrible, every single type of symptom that you could ever possibly get. They think that's what's going to happen to them.
Yep.
And so that's what brings in the fear. And then they go, okay, I don't want to go through this. How can I biohack my way out of it? So like we can do so much now. It doesn't mean you're going to get away from menopause. It's inevitable, but we do have solutions even for the ones who are having a really, really hard time. And I would love women to understand that there is a whole spectrum here. Your attitude counts, right? And what you see and what you do and how you eat and how you move. And then of course you have the hormone therapy you can take. It's just, there's so many options. And I love that in your book, you did cover so well hormone therapy, you're clearing a lot of confusion. But I really appreciate that you also, like me, say, well, you know what? You can't out hormone a bad diet and lifestyle. We need that as a foundation. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about that in terms of what do you think women need to be doing in terms of having the best transition of their life?
Well, I would say too, don't wait. I mean, you started out by saying, what are the statistics of women in perimenopause? It's probably even bigger than those who are in menopause. Those ladies need to listen up. They're the ones that have an incredible opportunity here. The rest of us who are already in the thick of it, we still have a lot of, as Maria and I call, low-hanging fruit. A lot of easy things to pick as daily habits that you can do to sort of shape your experience with what you're going through. And the perimenopausal ladies, look, you guys don't have to hit a brick wall. We hit the brick walls. You don't need to hit the brick walls. You can kind of get yourself there in a much gentler fashion. And, it does come down to women usually are under eating at this stage of life, and they're constantly trying to cut calories. They're ignoring their sort of carb lifestyle, which is quick fuel on the run, etc., not nourishing their bodies. You can't keep out cardioing what's happening here. You're making it worse. You cannot keep kicking your stress down the curb. You're making it worse. So they're basic things. Eat enough, eat for muscle, right? That's going to mean protein. Ditch the entirely plant-based diets. Plants are great. They're not the end all be all. They need to have their place. Move in a way that honors your aging body. I am no longer throwing 200 pounds on my back on a barbell and doing deep squats. I'm still doing squats with a barbell. It just doesn't have to be the same weights, right? So move your body in a way that honors kind of where you're at. Work on your mobility, work on your power. I mean, if we're all worried about being the old lady in the rocking chair that needs a walker to get up, okay, start doing some box jumps. Even those of us with bad knees can do those, right? Deal with your stress, please deal with it. We can't take it away. We're not going to be able to remove the aging parent who needs round the clock care and, the adolescent who just got flattened by everything that we put them through with COVID and they're dealing with mental health issues. We can't get rid of those things, but we can mitigate and blunt the stress that they cause us. Learn a gratitude practice, lean into prayer, start to meditate, honor nature. There are ways to sort of blunt these things. And then community. Like, ladies, stop being so alone, get off your pity party pillow and go be with other women. These things didn't include hormone therapy, right? Do all of those things, see where life shakes out, and then decide if you want to do hormone therapy. But hormone therapy is not a magic button. You have a lot of influence as to how you experience this. You have to be intentional and you have to make daily decisions. This is not something we're just going to float through and be victim to. So
right on. Oh, right on. Well done.
It's my tough love coming in.
You even gave us some practical tips as well. So I think that's a great place. That's the foundation, ladies.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're taking hormone therapy, it's got to be done. And, I think too many women think it's, oh, I just take some hormones and I'm good. And it helps a lot, certainly, especially I think some women who do struggle to eat right or get off the couch and get to the gym and they just need a little, they need good sleep. Right. And so once they get the good sleep, then they can do all the other things too. So just amazing. So thank you so much for that. Let's go back to the menopause. I have so many questions for you. I think we're going to have like two parts, but you mentioned Bi-Est in our, we're talking back and forth. What are we going to be talking about? Because I'd like to go back to the hormones and for the women, because you guys have so much experience with hormone therapy and how it's done. And Bi-Est is one of those things that I think it's not in Europe. We don't seem to be doing it here. It's just more of a North American thing, but explain what it is and why you don't like it.
It's a compounded medication, which is not a bad thing, but that just kind of leading with that. It is a combination of estradiol and estriol. It's usually a cream. It can be a pill capsule as well, but it's almost always a cream. And it usually is 80-20, 80% estriol and 20% estradiol. It can be formulated to be anything, 70-30, 50-50. So that's the benefits of compounding, right? We can kind of, make it just to what the patient client needs, but I guess at the end of the day, you can find some smart people who absolutely like it. We have collected so many stories of women for whom it is ineffective and for whom when we run their blood labs and we check their estradiol level, it's 5, maybe 15. Basically, we want to say at that point, you can probably have this level of estradiol with using nothing. So it's essentially like they're using nothing in terms of protective HRT. So I shared with you our kind of clinical experience around it. And it's a lot. It's not just a handful. It's a lot of women have come to us on Bi-Est.
But you did the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine program like I have with Dr. David Rosensweet. So he's so pro Bi-Est and that's it. Like he really pretty much covered that. And this guy has 30 years of clinical experience. So I'm wondering, why is he so into that?
Fair question. I mean, I just think so. Him and Dr. Berkson are like of this kind of school of thought of being influenced, I think, by Dr. Jonathan Wright. Just, some articles that came out, some science that came out a while ago showing estriol was protective, and that's because like it really stimulates the beta receptor, and the beta receptor is, puts the brakes on growth. Well, we always assume that growth is bad, but in order to have a repair process in the body, right, in order for sort of like the smooth endothelium of the blood vessels to repair, you need growth. Okay. So
bones need growth, right? It needs breaking down and growth at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we say, and I'll say it because Maria has trained with him and I have not, and I don't have any affinity that needs to be honored here. You know, our take is that doctors who prescribe Bi-Est or focus on estriol as sort of this driver of whatever hormone therapy, one, they're lacking the nuance to explain to women that estradiol, so, you know, for listeners here who may not know anything, we're talking about estrogens. They're all estrogens. We have multiple estrogens in the body. And estrone is one estrogen. Estradiol is an estrogen. Estriol, there's some others that are now kind of coming to market in pharmaceutical concepts and whatnot, but we'll just focus on those three to begin with. Estradiol is the primary genomic signaler in the human body, in the female body. Okay, that is the one that's telling the bones to balance their osteoclast and osteoblast activity. That's the one that's telling the, you know, vascular endothelium to sort of heal itself and regenerate. That's the one that's telling the brain to clear out tau proteins and protect our cognition. So much more. And as you said, we've got images that show kind of head to toe, from eyes, ears, down to our, you know, skin and everything else. So of those estrogens, estradiol and estrone can intraconvert, meaning they can go back and forth to one another in the body, depending on processes and parts of metabolism. Estriol, the body makes when it needs it, and estradiol gets converted into estriol to accommodate whatever demand the body might have. So if we have an endogenous supply or even a HRT provided supply of estradiol, we will always have the amount of estriol that we need because the body will convert it. But estriol cannot convert back to estradiol, okay? So if we're just giving a woman estriol, or we're predominantly giving her estriol in a Bi-Est cocktail, we are not giving her estradiol, the thing that we need to trigger all these genomic sequences. So that's the one thing, is that women are kind of not being shared that nuance, that we're all talking about estrogen here, but they have different roles and they're different capabilities across which estrogen we use. So that's one. Two is that we like to say doctors who love Bi-Est are usually somewhat still scared of estrogen. There is, whether they want to admit it or not, there's still this sort of mentality that estradiol and estrogens can be bad for women. Now, if that were the case, why did we all get through pregnancy where our estradiol levels were in the tens of thousands and none of us ended up with cancer, right? Or it's not a common occurrence for women to end up with these massive health, drawbacks from pregnancy. It doesn't happen. Estradiol in and of itself is not dangerous to the human body. So this notion that we're giving Bi-Est is sort of this implicit message that it's gentler, it's safer, and it's sort of less threatening to the woman. Well, when you have a woman who's been on Bi-Est for 50-50 even, so the stronger percentage of cocktail, and she's been on it for 5 years and then she's diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, you're going to find a really ticked off woman. And she's going to get really mad when she realizes that she never was given the actual signal that she needed to trigger that bone remodeling. So we get very frustrated with that, but then also the papers that these doctors love to put their stake in were based off of this theory that pregnant women don't get breast cancer. So therefore, the estrogen of pregnancy must be the cancer protective or, safer hormone. Well, that's not true. First of all, there are women who end up with cancer when they're pregnant. My best friend had thyroid cancer when she was pregnant. We know women with breast cancer when they're pregnant. So it's not universally protective. And B, the study that they looked at was looking at the urine metabolites of 9 women. We're not talking about a robust study. I think we even cover it in the book. There's sort of a sidebar where we talk about estriol and we explain how the data was extrapolated in a way to fit a narrative in order to appease concerns about estradiol. And again, those concerns are just highly misplaced. They're going off of this very old and overwrought notion that estradiol is dangerous. So that's why we don't love it, because we see these women too often. In fact, we have a client this afternoon who's exactly what Maria just described. She's fully osteoporotic and her estradiol level is 5, but she's been on 50-50 Bi-Est forever. That is why we get angry and loud about it, because these doctors aren't giving women the information they need to make an informed decision about the HRT they're choosing. The doctor's choosing it for them. It's very patronistic in the way that they say that here, this is safe and this is good for you. And then years later, women are dealt this blow that they have, poor heart health or poor lipids or poor, bones or whatever. So that's why we get really frustrated with estriol is the data doesn't support their arguments. And Maria can get into, it does downregulate innate immune cell function. And there's other issues with that. Women are already vulnerable to autoimmune processes in menopause and the perimenopausal transition. So there's a whole host of reasons why we don't like it, but we're just frustrated with sort of the implicit message is that the other estrogen is dangerous.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, the clinical experience, I think, is so important, because I guess the study and the data could say one thing, but in the end, what are you seeing in your own blood work or your own menopause symptoms and your own health? Do you have osteoporosis, osteopenia? And I think it's really hard when you're in this perimenopause transition, because our levels go up and down so much. And so how do we know, and different women respond in terms of symptom management? Let's just talk about symptoms only. Like some women, you'll find their blood work and their estradiol is quite high, but they need a high estradiol to suppress the hot flash, where some hot flashes can be suppressed with much less. But I would think that Dr. David Rosensweig, I just keep going back to him because I love his work, and I know you guys also respect a lot of what he does, but he is I mean, he's in that camp where he wants to have higher levels to not just suppress the symptoms, but to protect a woman for her future self. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around him and going, well, wait a second. I would think that, and I just can't understand why he's doing the Bi-Est. And isn't he seeing this in his testing? Like, it doesn't make,
Well,
and you don't have
so
to answer. Like, I don't want to bash David Raven Rodensweet, but
yeah, no, I think he's a lovely man, and I think he means well, and I think he's incredibly kind. I don't know. That's a really good question. I know you said he's seeing it in his testing, but I would really be more curious. Like, does he truly have a database of patients who have not just success, not beginner success on Bi-Est, but long-term success?
Yeah.
We're talking 5, 10, 15 years.
Because we
Yeah.
see too many of that. I mean, we orbit in certain online groups where we are seeing these women who are using, his platform and whatnot. And like Maria said, it's beginner success. And then, the wheels start to come off at 60, 62, 65, etc. And that's where we just get really frustrated because there's no reason to be scared of estradiol. There's none. So why aren't we using the very thing that has a very balanced expression? I know we might talk about receptors, but estrogens generally have affinity in different amounts for different receptors in the body. And we've got alpha receptors that are kind of growth and beta receptors that are sort of brakes. And estriol kind of hits the brakes. Estrone hits the growth or accelerator. And estradiol, guess what? Hits both.
Yeah.
So it just explained to us why we need to be afraid of it when it is a balance. I mean, the whole body is constantly seeking balance, right? That's the whole thing that keeps us healthy and thriving. So why would we only hit one lever when we could hit both levers in a nice balance?
You explain it really well. Actually, you had so many great arguments in the book for how it hits the accelerator and the brake at the same time. And I still have so many questions for you about testing, about testosterone, about thyropause that you brought up in the book. But I'm gonna have to let you go because we have a limited time. It's crazy. It's just I barely scratched the surface. So we definitely need to have a part 2, and we'll talk about those things if you don't mind and you want to come on again.
Sure.
And before I let you go, though, I would like to know a little bit more about the book that's coming out. And I'm super excited. I think everyone's got to get a hold of their copy and you keep it in your drawer as keep going, referring back to it. But is there anything, when is it launching, actually, first of all?
September 10th in the US and September 12th in the UK.
Awesome. And what would you like to share about the book in general? Why would a woman need this book?
Well, I mean, I would say we tried to write it as sort of an A to Z resource for women. So whether you're perimenopausal, recently menopausal, or long postmenopausal, there's something for everyone in there. I know that we've talked a lot about hormone therapy, but we want to be sensitive to women who either personally opt out of that choice or are truly not eligible for it, if like say they're in active cancer therapy, etc., that doesn't change the fact that they too are probably having symptoms of menopause. And so we tried to be in the book saying, like, look at the levers that you have in your control that don't include hormones. And oh, by the way, here are options that are non-hormonal therapies that you can use to sort of improve your quality of life. So we try and just bring women on a journey of education and really teach them sort of why maybe a lot of us have a hang up against our hormones. It probably goes back to early menstrual cycles that were heavy and crampy and all sorts of things. But that if we kind of reframed how we understood the menstrual cycle and what it meant for sort of the cycle of vitality in a human body, in a woman's body, then women would understand better when we lose those hormones and we lose that fertility, sort of what is at play, and then what are the options you have to address it. So we just try and cover truly, a very comprehensive approach for women to understand things. We're not doctors, we're not prescribers. What that means is that we have an ability to say things that some doctors do not. And so we try to, give all the science and the evidence backing to what we have to say, but say it in a way for women that don't feel being talked down to and they're not being talked over. So
Well, yeah, exactly. It's such a good book. And I think in the end, when women have to decide what works best for them, you gave a great background. You talk so well about the hormones, but you do give so much attention to really what needs to be addressed, the foundation, which you covered, and as well. And that's really important for a woman who chooses not to do hormone therapy for
absolutely.
whatever reason. And those
Correct.
people can feel really left out if with all this information that we have and the benefits and all that. So I don't want those women to ever feel bad. I don't want them to ever feel left out. And so you really included them in your book too. So I appreciate that. So before I let you both go, do you have any last words for a woman going through the menopause transition? Maria?
I would say, yeah, it's educating yourself is probably priority number one. Like, what is really going on? Don't leave it fully up to your doctor to educate you or your friends.
And you educate yourself with that book, The Great Menopause Myth. Go get it now. It's in the show link.
Okay.
It's in all the show notes.
I would.
Perfect. Yeah.
Kristen?
Yeah, I mean, I think, menopause, the best menopause is going to be an empowered menopause, and empowered menopause is going to be an informed menopause. And women, you have a lot of choices, and they're your choices. They don't have to be your doctor's choices. And if your doctor isn't aligned with you, find a new one. There's lots of them out there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really am so glad you wrote this book. I'll have the link in the show notes to the book, where to buy it. And it's coming out September 10th and then 12th, right? US and then UK.
Yep.
And go follow these girls on Instagram, Wise and Well. I'll have the link in the show notes too. And you'll find out a lot of great information on a daily basis. So thank you both for coming on. And I can't wait to have you on for a part 2.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.